Welcome to the Passive Income MD podcast, where we talk about creating your ideal life through multiple streams of income. If you enjoy hearing about this stuff, make sure to hit subscribe. Now let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, this is going to be a fun interview. We're going to be talking to Dr. Ronak Mehta. I'm super excited to talk to her because I've heard about her story for a while and it's great to connect. She's a board certified family physician and the founder and CEO of a company called Nerdbugs. You might have heard about her. You might have seen her products out there. She's currently a clinical assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. She's also one of NPR's How I Built This fellows, and her company, Nerdbugs, it's a plush toy company. We're going to learn all about it. It was a finalist for Amazon's Women-Owned Small Business of the Year. She launched it back in 2018, and she's built this incredible international presence with Nerdbugs. She's been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, NPR, Wisconsin's top 40, under 40. She's been featured on numerous TV channels all over the place. And I feel so lucky that we're going to be able to talk to her today, find out about her story, and learn more about Nerdbugs. How you doing, Ronak? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. That was lovely.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you here. I know I didn't do Nerdbugs justice. So do you mind just quickly telling everyone out there who's watching this what Nerdbugs is? And I think I asked you if you could show one of those as well. Let people know what it's for and the purpose of it.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I am a family medicine physician at the University of Wisconsin. And then on the side, I've also created Nerdbugs, which are a line of plush toys that are used to help educate around health and wellness and raise awareness about different kinds of medical conditions, and with the hopes of ultimately creating like a healthier world. So yeah, I do have a few of them that I would love to show you. Here's our heart, which is awesome. And each of them has a little pun that goes with it. So this one is aorta, tell you how much I love you. And then we have the lungs here, super, super adorable. And the little pun that goes with them is we belong together. And then I have one of the kidneys here too.
That's amazing. I think whenever anybody sees these, like I've shown my kids these, they go crazy for them. And I'm sure that's the reception you're getting everywhere. Now I have a question for you. We're going to go back a little bit. Is this like, did you always think about, starting a business? Was that always part of your plan as you came up through your medical career?
No, it wasn't. Throughout med school, I thought it would be really neat to have like this creative outlet to create an educational piece that could possibly reach people outside just like the smaller community that I was serving. And so I thought it would be really neat to create something, whether it was a book series or something like that, to help teach people about different types of medical concerns and, about the human body, and try to destigmatize some of these medical conditions. I didn't really know how to really go about doing it. So initially I did start with like releasing a children's book that I wrote back in 2018, or it was earlier than 2018. I'm sorry. It was while I was still in medical school. So I don't want to age myself. Yeah. But yeah, so when I was a third or fourth year medical student, I thought, hey, let me like write this thing. I'm kind of like quirky. It'll be great. And so I wrote it, and then it was like crickets. Nothing came out of it, but it was still really neat to create something that was like uniquely my own and have that avenue to be creative outside of just like going into work every day.
I mean, that's cool. So how did you know at that time how to even put a book together? Did it end up out there? I'm just curious where that project ultimately ended up.
Yeah, so that is an awesome question. That book ended up being like the brainchild for what Nerdbugs ended up transitioning into. So once I created the book, and once you kind of get started on a project, I'm sure Peter, that like it starts to morph into something else, and then it can morph into something else, and you get these like flood of ideas like, okay, well, it would be really neat to like create this and transition it into this someday. And so at that point, after I had written the book, I did end up finding an illustrator to like bring that like vision into life. But my thought was like, how neat would it be to take the characters from the book and then turn them into plush toys that could be used as like a comforting memento for people that are undergoing medical conditions, or just like as a teaching tool for kids and adults about, like, here's what your heart actually looks like, and this is what it does, and this is what happens when you have, like heart disease or like asthma, or when you undergo dialysis. So that was my like vision at the time, but like I didn't know how to start a business or run a business or anything like that. And I was still in medical school. And so a lot of that sort of got sidetracked. And it was like, well, I don't really have the confidence to do it right now. So let's just pump the brakes.
All right. So when did that actually become a reality? Because I know you're in family medicine, so I'm sure you went to residency there. When did you actually pick up the project again? And I want to kind of get to that point when you started thinking about it and figuring out how I'm going to put, energy towards this and make it happen.
Yeah. So I was in medical school. I graduated med school around 2012-ish. I believe, yeah, that's when I started residency. And so then it wasn't until late 2018, about 2018, that I decided, this idea has just kind of been nagging at me since I was in med school. Maybe I should really try to figure this out. People that are not in medicine, that haven't gone through like all of this education, have been able to like bootstrap things and Google it and figure out how to do it. I'm pretty sure if I just put a little bit more like time and effort and dedication into this, that I can also figure out like how to launch a business. And, but at the same time, also realizing if nothing comes out of it, that's okay. At least I made the effort and I tried. And 10 years from now, I won't be also thinking like, oh, wonder what it would have happened if I didn't, just let that idea simmer this whole time and not make anything of it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's great. I think that, you looked at the other side of regret, right? Regret of like, there's fear of failure, and then there's a regret of not doing something. And I think it's awesome how you took that to drive you and motivate you. Now, what was the first step then you took, and you're like, okay, I want to do this. I want to get this project going. What was that very first step for you? Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck.
I think I was a little bit uniquely positioned because I had all the drawings from like almost 10 years before, and I had that clear vision of like, okay, if I am gonna pivot and try to like turn these into actual physical products, like I already know what I want them to look like. I had an illustrator make them in the book a while ago. So what I decided was, okay, I'm just gonna do some aggressive Googling and I can figure out, okay, how do I make plush toys? And so it was really, a lot of late nights of how to launch an e-commerce business. Step 1, get a domain. Step 2, find out, like, make a prototype. And so during that process, when I made the decision in early 2018, I just started to put together like a bullet pointed list of like, okay, well, I need a product, and I need a platform where it can be visible. So those two things. And then from there, you just do a lot of Googling and figure out, okay, well, I'll need a web designer. I need, to figure out how to like create an Instagram page. And it sounds so simplistic. But once you actually make that decision, you'd be so surprised at how things just start to flow.
That's so cool. Because I'm assuming you're working at that time too, as an attending, right?
Yes. And I still am.
I know, you're still working. So how were you able to kind of like you're doing your work, start to fit all these ideas in? Where were you doing all this, Googling and setting up all this, setting up prototypes, and how were you able to do all that?
I think a lot of it, again, Peter, is like, and I'm sure you've sort of faced this, like when you start to get all these ideas and pursue these creative endeavors that you're doing as well, is that like what it's really like once you make that decision, once you make the decision and commit to it and commit to yourself, I think that that truly is the biggest piece of it. You find the time, like you will make the time to make it happen. And what I did was I started so small that it was easier to do it than not do it. So when I initially started, I told myself, no matter what, 7 days a week, I'm going to carve 10 to 15 minutes out of my schedule at some point during the day, and I will make the time to do the research. And, you know, obviously I spend more than 10 to 15 minutes now, but it was just that habit of like creating the 10 to 15 minutes of like research. And maybe one day as far as I got was like figuring out how to like buy a domain. And that's all I did. But it was something, or like, you know, create an email template to reach out to like a bunch of like custom toy manufacturers and then mass email them, you know, like each day it was just like one little puzzle piece that slowly just builds up your confidence. And the next day you're like, okay, well, I did that. I think I can do this next thing now, you know?
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, again, it all shows the power of momentum and just getting going. Now, when you create that first prototype, then what did you do next, just to walk people through that process a little bit?
Yeah, so I decided one of the big things that I decided early on with my now husband is a budget that I would be comfortable losing if I never saw that money again. Because, you know, when you start to take risks on yourself, you have to realize that it might not always work out. And it was a level of money at that time that it was like, it would be painful to lose. But at the same time, I also realized that, again, if I didn't take this chance on myself, then maybe I'll always wonder what if. So creating that budget was really important. And then I just did a lot of research on, you know, what would be, if I was a patient, what would be maybe the top 5 products that I would use day in and day out, or I would see in a clinical setting, whether it was to educate people about certain disease, illness, or like post-surgical conditions and so on and so forth. So I launched with 5 products, and I think I only ordered like 200 of each because I didn't know if anything would sell, and I would just have like a bunch of inventory while I was working with the manufacturer to get the product revised and revised again until I was like happy with the color scheme and the fabrics that they used and how soft it was and all of those things. While that was going on and they were still creating them, on the other end, I had hired and I found a web designer, and then I had found a photographer, and I found a social media person that could help me and like strategize with me. So there was a lot of like stuff on the other end while the products were being made. I didn't want to like end up sitting and wasting time while they were being produced.
Okay. I mean, you put all that stuff together, you do all that, and then you have it produced and you figure out all those things. And so did you just launch it on your own website? Do you use another platform? Like what was that?
Yeah. So I did 2 things. I launched on my own website and I launched on Amazon at the same time. And the reason why I did that was because as a consumer, I mean, and I'm sure you know, Amazon's the convenience of that 2-day shipping. I think people expect that. And I think people want that. Amazon is like very easily searchable for hundreds of thousands of products. But I also wanted people, since I was new, I wanted people who were like, oh, this is like a no-name brand. I've never heard of this. This is, you know, to be able to Google it and find a legitimate website. So they wouldn't feel like, oh, this person's like scamming me, or like a new product doesn't have any reviews yet. Is this like a legitimate thing? So yeah, I ended up launching on both at the same time. I didn't anticipate any orders really coming into the website because, you know, as far as SEO and things like that, that takes a while to build up that traffic.
Well, did it all take off though, right off the bat? Was it a slower simmer? What happened when you opened up store?
On Amazon, you know? It did end up taking off. I remember the first day I launched, I got 1 sale, and I was like beyond the moon excited. I was like, who is this lady that purchased a kidney? And then me and my husband went out and got ice cream and celebrated. I was like, oh my God. Like it's just really exciting to see something that you had as like a vision come to fruition, and then see someone else kind of like get joy from it. I think that was like super exciting. So yeah, when we first launched on Amazon, the orders came in, but it was like a very slow trickle. It would be like one order on day one and maybe like, one or two on like day 3 or 4. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I had a launch party and like we popped bottles and it was great.
So then when did it actually start to pick up? Because now you have all these accolades. Like, I mentioned that you were finalist for Amazon's Women-Owned Small Business of the Year. How did all that, again, all that press and all that stuff happen?
One of the things that I really took time, a lot of time doing in the beginning was trying to build up my like self-confidence. It sounds really weird. It sounds really cheesy, but I think it had taken me a really long time, like as I sort of mentioned, like about 10 years to even have the confidence to like go for it and really like put myself out there. That once I started gaining that momentum, what I also was doing on the back end was like trying to immerse myself in things like, like this conference or like reading a lot of books, listening to audiobooks, podcasts, anything that would really put me in the right mindset to believe in myself. And so when things like this Amazon Small Business of the Year contest came to my inbox, I would just approach it with like, well, I've only been in business for like 6 months, but like, why not? Like, why couldn't I have a chance to be a finalist? I think I have a great product. I think we have a great mission behind it. And I think it really, like, if people knew about it, I think it would really resonate with people. And so and whenever these opportunities sort of like came to me, I would just say, say a little prayer, put it out there, apply, do the best I could, and then have no expectations. If it worked out, great. If it didn't, then you try again and maybe someone would get it the next time. And it's totally okay. But once I ended up applying for the Amazon Women's Owned Small Business of the Year, and I was chosen as a finalist, it gave me confidence to apply for the NPR one. And then I was chosen as a fellow. And, all of these things then ended up resulting in downstream press. People really like a really good, heartwarming story, like especially these days, those are so few and far between.
I mean, that's amazing. So what does the business look like today in terms of where you're at, in terms of how you're running your business? How much time are you putting towards it, and still balancing in your clinical duties? And I'm just curious what your life looks like for you today.
So yeah, that's an awesome question. So I still work at the University of Wisconsin as a clinician, and I still run Nerdbugs, but my time is a little bit more evenly split. So I'm about part-time on my clinical duties, and I'm part-time on, well, it's technically part-time on both, but I'm sure, as you know, in medicine and when you're in primary care, part-time is still like full-time. Yeah. Because you're like answering all
and
those
in business too. And in business,
yeah,
it's part-time. Yeah.
You find creative ways to wake up early, stay up late, and like, get things done during your lunch hour. But, since I've launched in 2018, I think the biggest thing is finding great team members. I have like a small team now. They help with a lot of the customer service and social media stuff. And so I can take a step back and focus on like the big picture of like, where do I want this to go? What do I want this to look like? Not just today, but like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And so some of the things that, on the Nerdbug side of things that we're working on are like expanding to new plushies each year. And then the other big piece that I really wanted to focus on was doubling down on that educational piece. And so I had written that children's book, and then I ended up taking the book down because there was more plushies than there was organs in the book. And so I was been in the process of like rewriting that book, and I'm hoping to like launch that. And the other thing that, I have really wanted to do is to try to create like an educational series, whether it's like short video clips. And one of my big dreams would be to, launch into retail and then create like an online educational series where it would be on something like Netflix or Disney or something like that. Like it sounds like very wild and super out there, but I truly think that, it's okay to dream big. I never thought I would make it even this far. And so, why not?
I mean, your story is so awesome. I mean, it comes from, humble beginnings, from starting in med school to growing it. And people might just see you now and they see you on NPR as how I built this as a fellow, and they see all these type of things. Now, you kind of were, I mean, it was great. You shared some of your experiences before about how it took you a while to grow and this sort of thing. But there had to have been some other challenges that you faced. Maybe looking back, you're like, oh, I wish, or somebody wants, was, following your footsteps. You're like, oh, I wish I knew this, or I would have done this, or somehow there's a challenge that you got through. Do you mind sharing some of those things with us?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges, I'll just focus on the two biggest ones, and I sort of alluded to one of them, which was a lot of self-doubt. And I think a lot of people face it, even as physicians. Like, you're highly educated, you've gone through all this training, you've kind of been through the ringer, but when it's something that you don't know how to do, and that you've never tried before, I think it is so easy to kind of talk yourself out of it, and that narrative really stayed with me for such a long time. Like, who am I to start a business? Like, I've never had any formal business training. I don't know the first thing about hiring someone or launching a product or anything around a business. So I think a lot of that self-doubt can play a big factor in holding you back. And so I would really encourage people to start before you're ready, and then work on yourself throughout the process, and like try to chip away at those like negative internal conversations that you have with yourself, and try to catch yourself when you say that you don't know how to do something, or you can't do something, or you've never done something. So like, who are you to be the person to be so gutsy to try? And then the other thing is, I think that we've all sort of learned in the last few years is burnout. Not only being a physician, but also an entrepreneur. I think within the last few years, when you're trying to launch something that either has never been done before, or trying to launch something of your own, obviously it's going to require a time commitment. And so trying to find that balance of like, how can I still, if you plan on continuing to be a clinician, how can I still keep that piece and balance it with like pursuing these like creative endeavors, and then at the same time like having enough time for the people that you love, like your family and friends. It's definitely super challenging and very tricky, but I think in a big picture sense of things, those are the biggest challenges I think that I've faced.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those with us. I mean, I know that you now have this life though, where you're trying to balance your clinical stuff. You're trying to balance, the business. Yeah. How has like having this business changed your perspective or on medicine? And how do you look at medicine now, versus before you had this business?
I think the biggest thing is that it has provided me with freedom, like more of like financial freedom, like time affluence, or, like that freedom. And it sounds kind of weird to say out loud, but I'm at the point where if I decided to quit my clinical job, I wouldn't have to financially worry about, paying our bills. And I think that's a really nice feeling to have, because, based on like my values, one of the big reasons that I wanted to have a creative endeavor and have multiple streams of income was to be able to have that flexibility that if I wanted to, like if we're growing a family or something happens to a family member and I wanted to take time off or I wanted to work part-time, I didn't want it to be a financial strain on our life, and I wanted it to be something that I didn't want to think about. Like if I wanted to just work 2 days a week in clinic and not work the other days for like a month of the year or 2 months of the year and just spend time with my family, not feel like, okay, well, we can't do that because that's just not financially possible. So sort of answer your question.
Yeah, no. Well, it's amazing what you built. I mean, not only do you impact people on a local level at clinical medicine, now you impact people on I would say like a global scale. So that's awesome. I want to congratulate you for that. It's been like fun to watch your journey. I know that some people are going to listen to this, they're going to hear this, read the, see this, and they're going to want to connect with you. What's the best way that people can do that? Obviously your website, let people know what that is.
So yes, you could find me at nerdbugs.com. You could also reach out to me at my email at info@nerdbugs.com. And then I also have a LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com/Ronak Mehta MD.
Okay, that's awesome. We're going to put that also in the notes so people can find you. And I'm sure people are going to reach out to you and want to find out more. You've been an amazing resource so far. You've shared so much information as well as wisdom. But before we let you go, we always ask people, what's like one more tip that you have for someone who might want to follow in your footsteps?
The one tip I would say is to believe in yourself, because you really don't know where that will end up taking you. And having that spark of belief in yourself can change the world. So, why not take that approach?
Well, that's awesome. It's evident that it's helped you get where you're at today. So again, I want to thank you for, the time today. I want to thank you for all the amazing things that you do, and keep up the amazing work, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks. Enjoy the show? Let me know by dropping a review in the podcast app you're listening to us in. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit subscribe. Join thousands of physicians who are also on this journey to creating their ideal lives through multiple streams of income. Learn more at our website, passiveincomemd.com. Thanks again for allowing me to be a part of your journey. See you next time.